Hey everyone! If you're thinking of learning Python, or if you started learning it recently, you might be wondering, what can I use Python for exactly? Well, that's actually a tricky question to answer because there are so many applications of Python. But over time, I've seen that there are three main popular applications for Python: web development, data science, including machine learning, data analysis, and data visualization, and scripting. I'm going to talk about each of them in turn in this video. I'm also going to mention game development, embedded applications, and desktop applications by the end of this video. And as usual, I'm going to put a more detailed version of this outline in the comment section below, so you don't have to watch the whole thing if you don't want to. Okay, first of all, let's talk about web development. Web frameworks like Django and Flask, which are based on Python, have recently become very popular for web development. These web frameworks basically help you create server-side code. That's of course the code that runs on your server, as opposed to the code that runs on your user's devices, which is front-end code. But wait, you might say, why do I need a web framework in the first place? Well, that's because using a web framework makes it easier to build common backend logic. So this includes things like mapping different URLs to different chunks of Python code, dealing with databases, and generating HTML files users see on their browsers. And which Python web framework should you use if you're just getting started? Well, Django and Flask are two of the most popular Python web frameworks, so I'd recommend using either one if you're just getting started. Now, Flask is a smaller framework, and it has fewer components built into the framework itself. And that actually makes Flask a little bit simpler to learn than Django and a little bit more flexible. On the other hand, Django has more components built into the framework itself. For example, it has a very specific way to deal with databases, but with Flask, you need to choose what kind of database you want to use and how you want to interact with that database exactly. So I think Flask is a better choice if you want more control over what your code is going to look like exactly, and Django is probably a better choice if you're just more focused on building a straightforward application like a news site or a blog. And I found a pretty good article about the difference between these two, so I'm going to put a link to that in the description as well. Okay, let's go to the next topic, machine learning. Let's first quickly review what machine learning is. And to explain what machine learning is, I think the best way to do that would be to give you a simple example. So let's say you want to develop a program that recognizes what's in a picture. So for example, given this picture, you want your program to recognize that it's a dog, and given this other picture, you want your program to recognize that it's a table. Given this problem, you might say, well, maybe we can just write some code to do that. So for example, if there are a lot of light brown pixels in the picture, then maybe we can say that it's a dog. And if there are a lot of straight edges, let's say you figure out a way to detect edges in a picture, and if there are a lot of straight edges in a picture, then it's a table instead of a dog. But this kind of approach gets tricky pretty quickly. And the reason is, for example, what if there's a white dog in the picture with no brown hair? Or what if there's a table in the picture, but it only shows the round parts of the table? And that's where machine learning comes in. Machine learning typically implements an algorithm that automatically detects a pattern in the given input. So in this example, you can give, say, 1,000 pictures of a dog and 1,000 pictures of a table to a machine learning algorithm and say, these are the pictures of a dog and these are pictures of a table, and it will learn the difference between the two. So when you give it a new picture of either a dog or a table, it will be able to recognize which one it is. Now you can use the same idea to apply machine learning to things like recommendation systems. So think YouTube, Amazon, and Netflix, and face recognition and voice recognition, among other applications. Popular machine learning algorithms you might have heard about include neural networks, deep learning, support vector machines, and random forests. You can actually use any of these algorithms to solve the picture labeling problem I explained earlier. Now, there are a few popular machine learning libraries and frameworks for Python. Two of the most popular ones are called scikit-learn and TensorFlow. Scikit-learn comes with some of the most popular machine learning algorithms built in. I mentioned some of them earlier. And TensorFlow is more of a low-level library that allows you to build custom machine learning algorithms. So if you're just getting started with a machine learning project, I'd recommend that you first start with scikit-learn, and then if you start running into efficiency issues, then I'd consider looking into TensorFlow. And how should you go about learning machine learning? Well, personally, I'd recommend that you first get started with either Stanford's or Caltech's machine learning course. And after that, I'd practice what you've learned from there with this website called Kaggle. It's a website where people compete to build a machine learning algorithm to a given problem, and they have some nice tutorials for beginners too. Okay, what about data analysis and data visualization? To help you understand what these might look like in real life, let me just give you a simple example here. So let's say you're a data analyst working for a company, and that company sells some products online. And as a data analyst, you might draw a graph like this using Python. Now from this graph, we can tell that men bought over 400 units of this product this particular Sunday, and women bought only about 350 units of this product. And with this difference, as a data analyst, you might come up with a few plausible explanations that explain the difference. One possible explanation is that this product is simply more popular with men than with women. And another possible explanation is that the sample size was too small and this difference was just caused by chance. And yet another possible explanation might be that men tend to buy this product more only on Sunday for some reason, but not the other days. So to see which of these explanations is correct, you might create another graph like this one. Instead of showing the data for Sunday only, we're showing the data for all 7 days. And from this graph, we can see that the difference is pretty consistent over different days. So from this graph and from the earlier graph that we saw, we might conclude that the most convincing explanation is that this product is simply more popular with men than with women. Okay, so this is sort of a simplified example of what actual data analysis might look like in the real world. And it's kind of similar to the kind of work I did, at Google too. So it was just like this one, but only more complex. And I actually used Python when I was working at Google for this kind of analysis too. Now, one of the most popular data visualization libraries for Python is Matplotlib. And I think it's a good library to get started with because first of all, it's still one of the most popular ones. And it's also easy to get started with. And there are other libraries that are based on Matplotlib. So if you learn Matplotlib, it's going to help you, learn these other libraries later on if you want to. For example, this one called Seaborn. Now, if you want to get into data analysis and visualization, I'd recommend that you first start with my video tutorial. I'm going to put a link to that in the description. And after learning the fundamentals of, data analysis and visualization, I think learning the fundamentals of statistics will be really helpful as well. For that, I'd recommend websites like Khan Academy and Coursera. Okay, let's now go to the next topic, which is scripting. Well, first of all, what is scripting? Scripting usually refers to writing small programs that are designed to automate simple tasks. So to clarify what I mean by that, let me give you a simple example from my personal experience here. So I used to work at a small startup in Japan where we had this email support system. It was basically a system where we'd respond to emails we received from our customers. And then when I was working there as an intern, I had this task of counting the numbers of emails we received containing certain keywords. We could have done this task manually, of course, but that would have been a lot of work. So we decided to write a simple program / script to do this task, and that's scripting. Actually, we used Ruby for this particular task back then, but Python is also a good language for this kind of task. And Python is suited for this kind of task mainly because it has relatively simple syntax and it's easy to learn, and it's also quick to write something with it and test it. So these are the 3 main popular applications of Python, but you might say, what about game development? Well, you could use this library called Pygame to develop games, but it's not the most popular gaming engine. You could use it to build a hobby project or a personal project, but I personally wouldn't choose it if you're serious about game development. If you're serious about game development, I'd rather pick something like Unity with C#, which is one of the most popular game development engines out there. And what about desktop applications? You could make one using Python, with libraries like tkinter or Qt, but it doesn't seem like the most popular language for this kind of purpose either. Instead, according to this Quora article I found, it seems like languages like Java, C#, and C++ are more popular for this purpose. And recently, some companies started using JavaScript to create desktop applications too. For example, Slack's desktop app was built with this thing called Electron, which allows you to build desktop applications with JavaScript, and it seems like a recent trend. And personally, I'd go with the JavaScript option if I was building a desktop application, because it allows you to reuse some of the code from your website if you have a website, and if you don't, you'll be able to use some of the same code from the desktop application to build a website as well. Okay, and you might say, what about embedded applications? Well, I'm not an expert on embedded applications, but I know that Python works with Raspberry Pi, and it seems like a popular application for hardware hobbyists. And you might say, should I learn Python 3 or Python 2? Well, I'd recommend Python 3 since it's more modern, and it's a more popular option at this point. Okay, if you have any other questions about this video or anything else, please feel free to let me know in a comment below or on Twitter or Instagram. And if you're looking to learn Python for the first time, I'd recommend my Python tutorials right here. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.